Alright, YouTube, we're back again. We've been uploading quite a bit here lately. We have a small bit of news today in regards to Square Enix. It's an interview with Yoshida and Eurogamer. They're mostly talking about Final Fantasy XIV and Dawntrail and kind of the future of the game and stuff. We're not really interested in that sort of stuff in terms of what we talk about here on the channel, but Yoshida does answer a question about Xbox and Square Enix and things like that, and he gives a pretty extensive answer that is kind of interesting. It's something we've been talking about on the channel for a while, is Final Fantasy games making their way to Xbox eventually, that type of shit. Mostly just the remake project, and also I guess Final Fantasy 16. I'm not really sure what other Square Enix games off the top of my head right now. I guess Forspoken. I don't know what's going on with that game, but besides Forspoken, I guess I'm not really sure what other Square Enix games right now are exclusive to PlayStation. We'll say before we hop into the question and answer, one sort of weird thing is they mentioned that Dawntrail for Final Fantasy 14 marked the launch of 14 on Xbox. It came out in July, right? I think you could get in it early in the end of June, but it came out July 2nd. But 14 came to Xbox in March. I don't know if there's something I'm not understanding there. Maybe you guys can let me know. And we hop into it. Dawntrail also marks the release of the game on Xbox. How has that helped to grow the success of the game and grow the audience? Do you feel there's a market for Japanese games on Xbox? Players have been waiting a long time for the Xbox release of Final Fantasy XIV, but I'm happy to say that we've seen a really strong response on Xbox. We've seen communities starting to establish, and now they're growing. We've had a pretty good response on Xbox. With Final Fantasy XIV as an opportunity, we could take this opportunity to strengthen the community on Xbox towards the Final Fantasy franchise. I think this is where we would take more communication and work on establishing the community moving forward. And this is important, not for Final Fantasy XIV, but I would say for Square Enix. With Final Fantasy XIV's release on Xbox, Phil Spencer spent a lot of his time and a lot of effort and put in a lot of hard work into making it a reality. So we would like to make the best of that and further deepen the relationship with Xbox gamers moving forward. So we can probably stop there just for a second, because according to Yoshida, at least with the first part we read, there's a good response to 14 on Xbox. I don't know what that is. I don't know if we have sales numbers. It's been out a few months on Xbox at this point, so I would think there'd be some sort of numbers out there that we could look into. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or not. I will say I did come across a forum post from a few months ago, sometime in June, and they were looking at the top paid games on Xbox, and Final Fantasy XIV wasn't even the top 400, so I don't entirely know. I'm not sure if that shit's actually in order, right? Maybe it is. I did kind of skim through the pages. There's only 11 pages of 900 something games. I don't think I've seen Final Fantasy XIV on there anymore. I could be wrong, but if that does matter, that means as of right now, it's not even in the top 1,000 paid games, pretty much. And we're kind of spending too much time on this top paid games thing, but there is free options for Final Fantasy XIV, right? You can play up to a certain point or for so many days for free or whatever the fuck. So that could be where there's the audience is the people that aren't paying for the game necessarily, right? That are doing the free trials and all that other stuff. That could be a possibility. I don't know. That's why the second part that Yoshida talks about, where they're kind of using 14 as, I guess, sort of a launching point of pushing the Square Enix games onto the Xbox market. I mean, it's good in theory. The problem is, if we're looking at the Final Fantasy franchise, obviously these days you can get pretty much every game, right? Except for the 7 remake and obviously 16, I think right now. Those the only games, maybe the Pixel remasters, I'm not sure. But, pretty much all the games, all the Final Fantasy numbered entries and shit, and whatever, are available on Xbox. But the franchise for the longest time was PlayStation exclusive, right? Where obviously the originals were Nintendo, the PS1 era, PS2 era. From Final Fantasy 7 all the way to 11/12, because 11 was PlayStation exclusive, I think also was on Windows or whatever. And then 2006, it came to Xbox 360, and also 2006 is the year that Final Fantasy 12 came out, right? But that was also a PlayStation exclusive for a pretty long time. Once you get to 13 is where they start to try to venture into the Xbox market for the most part. Even then, though, the initial release of the game was in Japan on PlayStation 3, right? And then once it launched worldwide, it was on 360 and stuff. And then Final Fantasy 14 was obviously PlayStation exclusive for a long-ass time. And then Final Fantasy 15 launched on, PlayStation and Xbox. It's the remake project and obviously 16 last year, and these are back to being PlayStation exclusive games. So it's you're wanting to work on growing your Xbox market, but there's this whiplash of we have some of the numbered entries launching on Xbox, but then some of them aren't, right? And it's so what do? Do I invest in the Final Fantasy franchise on my Xbox or not? God damn it, tell me what to do. It's up because Yoshida goes on to talk about how there's not a big market for Xbox in Japan, which is obviously very true. And that's more than just Square Enix and the Final Fantasy franchise. Just in general, Xbox doesn't do well in Japan. I want you to just take this as a general argument, but when it comes to the Xbox platform and the fact that it was difficult for Japanese titles to be released on the platform, that's tied into the fact that in the Japanese market, there's an extremely low number of users on Xbox, and naturally, because we're Japanese developers, we have a desire for many people in our country to play our games. I think that applies to developers in any country, whichever country they come from. They want many people from their own country to play their games. Because of that, it's really a tough point in terms of a business standpoint. I think that's generally one perspective of how you can look at things in terms of the situation. So I totally get what Yoshida's saying here, right? Because if you're a Japanese developer, you want to sell your games really well in your home country, and if Xbox isn't big there, like, you don't necessarily want to put your games on there. Like, I kind of understand what he's saying. But at the same time, in the defense of, like, the Xbox brand, I suppose, like, they haven't really tried, right? Like, as we talked about, like, for a lot of the franchise, other than retroactively bringing games to Xbox these days, they weren't really trying to. Like, what if, like, the original, like, FF10 and FF11 when it first came out, and Final Fantasy 12 when it first came out, were coming out on the original Xbox, right? And then you get to, like, the 360 era, and then you have, like, Final Fantasy 13 and then 14. Imagine if 14, look how popular 14 is these days. Imagine if 14 came out on Xbox from day one. That game alone could have, like, helped build the Final Fantasy brand and maybe help JRPGs in general on Xbox, right? And beyond that, you have Final Fantasy 15 launch on, Xbox One and stuff as well. And then if you get to, like, the 7 remake and Final Fantasy 16, if these games were coming out all this time, since like 2001, since the original Xbox came out, if you're trying to push these games onto that platform, there would maybe be an audience for it. This is coming from the perspective of somebody who was on Xbox for quite a long time, right? I was on 360 and Xbox One for a very long time, and I did buy Final Fantasy 13 on 360. Whenever day one, I bought Final Fantasy 15 on Xbox One because it was available, right? If that game was, back then, when 15 came out, if it was only on PS4, I wouldn't have fucking bought it or played it, because I wouldn't have bought a PS4 just to play fucking Final Fantasy 15. The game was cool. I like it these days more than I did back in the day, but it was not a console seller for me, right? Actually, funnily enough, now that I've said that, like, those weren't, like, the most well-received Final Fantasy games, so, like, 13 coming to Xbox, like, day one and shit, and it being, one of the most negatively received, like, Final Fantasies, I would say, in the franchise, right? It's kind of, like, maybe that also burned a lot of the fan base, right? I don't know how well 13 did on 360, but if, like, a bunch of people on Xbox bought that, and they were like, the fuck am I playing this franchise for? However, at Square Enix, we have been changing our policy, so now we are moving towards the policy of releasing our games on a multi-platform basis. We really want as many players as possible to play our titles. So with Final Fantasy XIV as the starting point, we do want to release more Square Enix games on Xbox, and there will be more of our titles released on Xbox, so I hope players will look forward to future things to come on the platform. So yeah, just kind of like reiterating what he said previously in one of his answers, 14 is sort of like the launching point in a sense of them bringing, more Square Enix games to the Xbox platform, which is great, because if you guys have been following the channel for a while, for literally years now, I've been kind of an advocate for them to, like, bring, the remake project and any other, like, Final Fantasy games, and I guess Square Enix games in general, to the Xbox platform now. But I will say, it's maybe too little too late, right? There's obviously an audience there, because the Series X/S has sold, tens of millions of units. That's still a massive audience to, like, try to promote your games to. Maybe it's not big in Japan, but in general, it's still a pretty big audience. But as we talked about throughout the video here, they haven't really, been pushing a lot of their games onto the Xbox brand for the last, 2+ decades, right? 2.5 decades almost. It's great that they're trying to do that now, and it's exciting for, like, the future, just like, people on Xbox and PlayStation or whatever can play games same time. That's great, right? But it might be too little too late, because you don't have this reputation of, like, building an audience on the Xbox brand, right? So I just don't know. We'll see how it goes in the future, when, Final Fantasy 17 comes out in the future. Like, how well does that game do on the Xbox platform? I guess we could look to, like, other Square Enix games that inevitably will be, like, day one launching on Xbox, how they do versus, like, the PlayStation brand. But I think that's where the audience lies, right? Because they've built this reputation on PlayStation since fucking Final Fantasy VII in the 90s, right? So it's just like, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it goes. Video dudes, is kind of my thoughts on this. I do still want their games to come to Xbox. Maybe, 14 is the start of that. Maybe 14 and beyond, and maybe retroactively bringing, like, 16 and the 7 Remake Trilogy eventually to Xbox, and maybe that'll help. And then you got Kingdom Hearts 4, Dragon Quest 12, things like that, right? Final Fantasy 9 Remake, the 9 Remake, give me the 9 Remake, like, god damn it, where's the trailer? Give me something. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, social networks in the description below, follow me on Twitter, ffxiv, that's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.